Okay, welcome everybody. I am honored and pleased that you've chosen to join us for this inaugural webinar that we are launching a support program for all of you and for us as well, as we all struggle to adjust to this current reality of what the coronavirus situation is presenting to us from a health point of view, from a life point of view, societal point of view, etc. It's obviously a very fluid situation. There's a lot of moving parts. We are all trying to figure out, how to protect ourselves, how to protect our family, how to adjust to the recommendations as they shift and change. And our idea and hope is that we can offer you a place where we can, have support, where we can offer you support. There's a huge amount of stress and of fear and anxiety that we are seeing, that I am seeing in myself and my family, in our practice with our patients, and obviously in society at large and in the news, etc. And so one thing that we want to do is to be able to provide, both a place to get updates and medical information as it comes out, and again, very rapidly evolving. And then also a place to, learn lifestyle aspects and, dietary aspects, stress reduction aspects, sleep optimization aspects, any ways that we can cope with the immediate circumstances of the situation, but also help to balance and boost and protect our immune system and ability to stay healthy. So our idea for today will be together for about 90 minutes. We would like to have this be a weekly meeting as we build momentum here. Today, we'll have my friend and colleague here at CCFM, Dr. Ramsey Asfour, who's a board-certified infectious disease doctor. He'll give us a short presentation on state of some of the medical and scientific information as it's evolving. We'll do he'll talk for about 15 minutes or so. We'll do a brief Q&A on the medical side. And then we'll have Lindsay Christensen, our nutritionist, give us a short presentation as well on ways we can work with food and diet to control inflammation, balance our immune system, etc. And then from there, I'm going to introduce and pass the presentation to my friend and colleague, Valerie Keim, who is a marriage and family therapist and also a specialist in EMDR, eye movement desensitization response, a really powerful tool and technique for dealing with trauma and anxiety and fear, etc. And we'll spend the rest of the session today, just talking, sharing, communicating, going through some mindfulness exercises and ways that we can all, work together and try to make it through this in the sanest and healthiest fashion possible. So with that, I'm going to pause. Thank you again for joining us. And I'm going to pass the baton over to Dr. Ramsey Asfour.
Hey, Ramsey, this is AJ. I believe you're muted.
Well,
there you go.
Hi, everybody. So I'll start over.
Thanks, Ramsey.
Thanks for mentioning that. So hi, everybody. It's great. Thank you, Dr. Schweig, for the introduction and for getting this together. I think it's a great opportunity for us to be together with our patients in a different format. Our clients, those of you in the CCFM ecosystem, we are excited to be able to provide this alternative method of communication with you and updates. And I think this is a great approach. I'll try to give a brief presentation and we'll open up just for a few questions before we move on into talking about other issues, and Lindsay will have a presentation afterwards. So this is a little update about COVID-19. So as you probably know, the CDC travel warnings have been shifting quickly from basically just China and South Korea, Japan, and even Japan is not a full stage 3 warning, but at least on March 12th it wasn't. And now they've added the UK. This is evolving quickly. There's been announcements for Americans not to travel anywhere and outside the country, and for Americans abroad, either come home now or don't come home for a while. So that's certainly anxiety provoking for a lot of us. I want to also point you to a few sites that give some reliable data on this. So there's a lot on the media. In fact, a colleague at Apple said that they're not accepting apps from the coronavirus apps unless they're from a government agency at all, zero across the board. So there's a lot of misinformation. They can't tell what's malware, but what's misinformation and what's not. So they don't want to contribute to that. So they just shut that pathway down. Johns Hopkins University at this website, coronavirus.jhu.edu, has a lot of resources for patients, and it's got a tracker. If that tracker gives you anxiety, I suggest not looking at it, but they do have good information that's reliable about the disease, and certainly we'll try to present some here. But the activity is essentially widespread in North America now, and especially widespread in California and the Bay Area in particular. This is another shot from their website accessed yesterday. So, you know, we have a lot of cases. The good news is that there's a lot of, there's a decrease in cases. There was a New York Times article yesterday showing that, you know, we know that China has had 0 cases for several days, and that the curve, there are already places on the other side of the curve. So there's hope. You've all heard about flattening the curve. There's, you know, that's an important healthcare measure. So while I'm, you know, 2 days a week, I'm a physician at CCFM, I do consulting for some rural hospitals and nursing homes and some businesses on how to manage with, you know, manage this issue. So I'm really in touch with what's going on, our shortage of personal protective equipment. So we're dealing with everything. Today I was on a call with a rural hospital talking about how are they going to acquire enough ventilators to manage patients, because if we stay in this peak, that, you know, we're going to be in trouble. If we go to the flatter curve, we'll be just fine. And so the you know, the peak, this is our health system capacity. This is what we can handle in a hospital. And you might know that hospitals in California in particular, but other parts of the country, don't have enough beds, especially in urban centers. So one example is California Pacific Medical Center in San Francisco, a great medical center where they built a new hospital. They have fewer beds in the new hospital than they did in the older hospital. And that's true across the board for the most part. All the new hospitals they're building in California, because of earthquake codes, tend to be a lower number of beds than the old hospitals. So our capacity has decreased over time. So Carnival Cruise Ships has agreed to use some of their cruise ships for non-COVID related care. We have Navy ships coming in. We've got the military involved. I think that's all excellent. We need to mobilize resources, and I think that's happening. But with the stay-at-home guidance from Governor Newsom yesterday for California, I think that was great. I think we need to close schools. My personal opinion is that they'll stay closed for the end for this school year. So I don't think we're going back to school this year. I also don't think this will end up being quite as severe as we fear, because we're staying at home and really minimizing that contact. I've switched all my appointments to virtual unless somebody absolutely needs to be seen in the office. We're doing everything virtual ourselves. We're practicing social distancing. I think that's quite important. So I wanted to also talk about masks. Everybody's asking me, what do you do with masks? And why aren't we allowed to use masks? Well, the truth is nuanced, as it usually is. Masks do offer some protection for anybody. So if you're walking around in the grocery store or in public, will a mask give you protection? Probably. If we're doing social distancing, then masks are not really an issue. But they probably provide some protection. So that's why densely populated places like Hong Kong, Singapore, places in Taiwan, South Korea, after the first SARS epidemic a few years ago, they got used to wearing masks. And so they were wearing masks in public. They have masks. We don't have masks. We have to save them for when we really need them and when they're of the most benefit. So we're in a public health situation where we have to allocate resources. So until we have more masks, even some hospitals have already run out or just about to run out. Santa Clara Valley Medical Center has put out a call through their volunteer network to get people to make cloth masks at home. And one of the best-selling books on Amazon is How to Make Your Own Mask. So if people really want to, I encourage making your own mask. Please don't buy other kinds of masks that healthcare workers might use, and certainly don't hoard anything. But if it gives you a sense of security when you're going to the grocery store, that is not unreasonable, especially if it's a homemade mask, and then you can show others how you made your mask. That might be a good resource. You can use old t-shirts, for example. There's a lot of information online how to do that. Best use of gloves. I generally don't recommend gloves outside of the healthcare setting or taking care of somebody with an active infection. If you get a delivery from Amazon, do you need to wear gloves to open it? Keep in mind that patients with autoimmune disease that are not immunosuppressed with biologic agents, for example, or steroids, they're probably not at higher risk for COVID-19 infection. So, their immune systems are active and primed, and so perhaps that risk is not so high. So I don't know that you need to use gloves in those situations. You can make your own alcohol-based hand sanitizer. You can use isopropyl alcohol if you can find any. That's been sold out in my region. You can also use Bacardi 151 or something similar, but you want, remember the proof number is, you have to divide by 2 to get the percentage of alcohol. So 80 proof vodka is 40% alcohol. That's not enough for alcohol-based hand sanitizer. You can use aloe and essential oils. There's lots of recipes online. Remember that washing your hands takes longer than you think. So 20 seconds of hand washing is singing happy birthday twice, okay? Sing happy birthday to yourself or someone you love, twice while you wash your hands. And friction is key, okay? So friction, like you see, that's the real key. Even with hand sanitizer, it's friction that is important. And people forget that. They put hand sanitizer on and then they do like that and they're done. No, they really have to be thorough and wipe their hands, okay? You need to clean your phone. We joke and say the dirtiest part of a doctor is their phone. I always ask people that. People usually say stethoscope. Well, the phone is dirtier. And then you have to risk stratify. How concerned should you be? Do you live with older people? Are there high-risk people living in your setting? So those are considerations that you should take in mind with the level of precautions that you take. Do you need to be OCD about cleaning your car and your glasses and everything else? I suggest no. I think we need to be calm. We need to think about the relative risks of these things. And but I do say that, when, for example, this weekend, I'm going to work at a hospital that has COVID cases in the Bay Area. So, what am I going to do? I'm going to wear the appropriate PPE. I'm not going to go around the hospital with a mask on. I'm going to, partly because it's a shortage, eventually everybody in the hospital will be wearing a mask, but right now it's a shortage. I'll, come out of my car when I get home, go into my garage, take my clothes off, and put them in a bag, and I'll do that on Saturday, and then hop in the shower, and then then I'll be fine. So I would also do the same the next day, but you don't need to do that if you're going to a grocery store and just touching a few things at the grocery store. I don't think that's necessary. And remember, if you're wearing gloves, you have to clean the gloves. You're still just as likely to touch your face. So I argue if you touch it using gloves at the grocery store, somebody asked that, and then you touch your face, that's probably worse than just using your hand. So socializing. So my kids are at home. Lots of our kids might be at home. They're asking, can I go over to my friend's house? Can I play? Can I do this? So really limit that activity. That's the whole point of the social isolation. And we're going to look back on this and say that, hey, we overdid it on the social distancing. That's a good thing. We probably didn't overdo it. I don't think we can overdo it because this is spreading quite rapidly in the community. And so we're basically putting the kibosh on the spread by all of these maneuvers. And they're not sustainable. There's the economic activity. All of us, some of us that have, a bank account or stock account are a little bit concerned, rightly so. But I think that those concerns are going to all be balanced, and then we'll have periods where we perhaps open up most things except for larger group gatherings, and then we'll have some outbreaks again. It'll calm down again. Just regional, local outbreaks, local measures again. Then relax those after a little while. So there'll be some up and downs with overall things getting better. My prediction is, probably about 6 weeks. I will have hopefully hit the peak and we're on the other side. So also keep in mind, if you have elders living at home or people at higher risk, you might want to limit your kids' interactions outside. My daughter, for example, goes running with a friend, but they try to maintain distance. It's hard for a 13-year-old or 12-year-old to really understand, but I am letting them go running with only one friend at a time, with the consent of their parents, and only when they're consistently maintaining distance between them. But groups of 2 max, that's my approach. So does it live on surfaces? Does it live on skin? On food? People ask me, what should I do when I get a delivery? So I'm basically telling them, again, risk stratify. If you're low risk, you probably don't need to worry much. If you have older people in your house, you might want to accept the delivery at the doorstep, take the food out of the bag, leave the bag there, take the food out of the containers, put them in Tupperware, and then dispose of the containers, hand hygiene, and then enjoy the food. That's a reasonable approach. Deliveries from Amazon or Thrive Market or other places, I'm not too worried about. It doesn't live on soft surfaces very long or very well. Cardboard absorbs moisture. It'll disintegrate the droplet that the virus is in. So I'm not too worried about that. It can be, viruses don't really live the way bacteria or humans live, but they can, we call it viability or not viable. And so viruses on the surface are, they might be detectable for a while. The question is whether they're viable or not. So you might be able to detect viral DNA for 36 hours on stainless steel and maybe 6 hours on cardboard, but is it actually viable that whole time? Probably not. So and skin, it can live on skin for a while, so you should, that's why we do hand hygiene. And how often should you clean your phone? Probably every time you go out of the house to a grocery store. If you're going on a run with your phone, you don't need to clean it when you come back. You're not touching anything else or anyone else. But if you're out and about at the grocery store, maybe you're using Apple Pay, for example, so you don't have to touch that pen, which personally I never love touching at the grocery store anyway, to sign if you use a credit card. So contactless payment. I think Apple Pay and Google Pay are going to make get some more business out of this. So what happens if I get a cough? So what are the symptoms of COVID? When do you push to get a test? So runny nose makes me feel good. Only 5% of people have a runny nose, 5% or fewer. So that's not very many. So if you have a runny nose, it's likely not COVID-19. When do you push to get a test? Well, right now getting a test will probably cause more anxiety because it's super hard to get a test, even for Dr. Schweig or myself to get somebody tested. There's a lot of hoops to jump for, special calls you have to make. And in a sense, right now, unless you're a high-risk person, meaning lung disease, age over 65 or 70, and other advanced diseases, cancer, then I wouldn't push for a test. People with Lyme disease are probably not at much higher risk for this than anybody else. Some of our patients on Lyme disease are already on plaquenil or hydroxychloroquine, for example, which is a medication that might actually have some activity for COVID-19 infection. So there might be some protection there. What if somebody has a cough at home? Well, if it's a dry cough and it's stable, and let's say that it's a family of 4, and the oldest person is 50, and there is, it's a dry cough. Maybe one of the spouses has one of the parents has a cough, and there's 2 kids. And what do you do? Well, ideally, social distancing in that situation, mask if you get one when that person is out of their room, and try to minimize close contact. Sleep in a different bed if possible, different room if possible. The chances are by the time that person has a cough, the other people may have been exposed. Could that be COVID-19? It could. Will testing matter? Probably not. Eventually, yes. But this week, today, I wouldn't push for testing. As I said, it will probably cause you more anxiety than it's worthwhile. Certainly, if you're a patient, contact us and we'll talk to you about it. And that's all I had to say for this. We'll turn it over for a few minutes of questions on COVID, and I see some coming in here. Question about stomach issue as a symptom. So lots of people, there's a lot in the media about that. In the Chinese study that came out in New England Journal end of February, about 5% of people had GI symptoms. So most people don't tend to have GI symptoms, but it's changing. We're different. With influenza, a lot of people do have GI symptoms. So I'm thinking that gut symptoms aren't the biggest issue, biggest factor, but that's something to keep in mind. If you have no respiratory symptoms and no gut symptom and some gut symptoms, I wouldn't think it's a COVID infection. So one question also that people ask is, how can I find out if I've had it? I want to know if that cold I had 2 weeks ago was COVID. And pretty soon you'll be able to find out by doing an antibody test. Those antibody tests are not being prioritized because we really want to make the diagnosis of active infection. And those are the testing kits and testing methods that you've heard talked about already. But eventually we'll need to know, and maybe we'll be in a situation where people who have already had the infection, and by the way, I don't think, for most people, you can't get it again. You'll be immune, and so you can go on and not have to worry about it. How do I clean my phone? I clean my phone by I use either hydrogen peroxide wipes or Windex. It's friction. Remember, friction. Even if the spray, the cleanser, doesn't always kill all the viral particles, the cleaning and the friction is definitely helpful. Somebody asked if monolaurin can help here. I'm not sure. I think that we have to be careful about a lot of particular recommendations. There's some companies are being very good about this, and some companies are not, and touting their products as anti-COVID, and we have to be a little bit careful about that. But certainly, I think, in my opinion, sleep is one of the best things you can do for your immune system, and mindfulness, as Dr. Schweig will talk about. Is it possible that mosquitoes can become a vector? Probably not. Probably unlikely that mosquitoes would be an issue. So somebody asks, tightness in lower throat, pressure in the chest, feels like acid reflux. Could that be COVID symptoms? It's not classic. Certainly a cough would be more likely, and it's possible. It's difficult to know for sure. When should one get medical procedures scheduled? So if you have a medical procedure that's necessary, like radiation for cancer or a biopsy to diagnose cancer, those are not being canceled. Those are fantastic. I mean, not fantastic, but go and do them. Do those procedures, and you need medical procedures. In looking at the South Korea and China curves, took about 3 to 4 weeks for them to go from noticeable cases to fully on the down slope. You know, again, we're flattening the curve. We don't know exactly how long that will take at this point, but we hope, as I said, about 4 weeks. At least, well, in 4 weeks, we're going to know a lot more, and hopefully we'll already be on the other side. And do I have experience administering chloroquine, giving chloroquine, you know, using it for malaria? Absolutely. Using it for coronavirus. I prefer hydroxychloroquine, but that's probably a little bit more effective and definitely safer than chloroquine. And you can't get anything. I mean, it's all sold out ever since Pence announced it. So hospitals, I was just on the phone with a hospital. You know, they were trying to get more and they couldn't. So be careful. Don't think, you know, we have to be careful and let our resources be allocated appropriately. I can't get the toilet paper thing. I don't understand that, why there's no toilet paper in Australia or Costco over here. I just don't understand that, but people are panicking. So Dr. Ulsterholm now says this can be passed by simply breathing out. 6 feet isn't enough. So again, you're talking about directed droplet precautions. So most droplets, you know, 3 feet is usually good. 6 feet is sort of a safety zone. And then after 6 feet, it becomes unlikely to transmit this infection. So it becomes rather unlikely after 6 feet. If you have an aerosol generating procedure, so what does that mean? That means you're giving a nebulizer, for example, for asthma, that can generate aerosols, and then it can become more airborne, and then it can last a little bit longer. So that's something that I'm, you know, quite, you know, a lot of people say, well, yes, can you possibly detect with genetic testing? Perhaps, but will it be infectious? That's another question. And then somebody said all cancer stuff denied at Kaiser. You know, at Sutter, who I'm more familiar with, they're not canceling elective, you know, radiation treatments. I mean, if you have prostate cancer and you've been thinking about doing radiation therapy and you finally decide to now, that can wait a few weeks. That's a very slow growing tumor. That's probably better to wait than to do it. But if you have, for example, a brain cancer, that should not wait, most likely. It depends. You have to speak to your oncologist or radiation oncologist about that. If you're taking Plaquenil for existing conditions, it will, yes, become difficult to get prescriptions filled. So hopefully some pharmacies can prioritize that.
They're working on ramping up global supply chains on that. Obviously, there's going to be a little lag on it.
Right. Sanjay, do you have any other questions to add to this before we?
Sure, yeah. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Asfour, for giving us that informative talk and for answering all the questions. We will take a couple of more questions. There are a lot that are coming in. We recognize the need that's out there. We will be doing these meetings. We're going to try to target once a week to get you guys information out there. There's a lot of questions. I just want to, address some common themes that are coming in on the question stream. But, who is at higher risk versus who is at normal risk? Our practice, obviously, we have most of our patients are folks with complex chronic illnesses, autoimmune diseases, gastrointestinal diseases, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, et cetera, Lyme disease co-infections, et cetera. And, it's a bit of a gray zone. We know sort of who the higher risk people are, those with, diabetes, particularly if it's poorly controlled and they have downstream sequela like kidney issues or cardiovascular disease. Those in general with cardiovascular disease, history of stroke, heart attack, anything in that realm. Pulmonary diseases and more severe ones, especially like COPD, emphysema, et cetera. And if you're on the spectrum of having, asthma, mild asthma, moderate asthma, you're not at as great risk as somebody with, more severe COPD. It's a spectrum of risk, but you're probably also not at the baseline population risk, because with inflammatory insult to the lungs, there will be more of a tendency for that reactive airway disease process to happen. But again, if it's mild and or moderate and infrequent exacerbations, I think your risk is not great. Now, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, for all of our inflammatory, more autoimmune patients, we'll be sending out some information on that. We don't think there's a huge increased risk to you, and that's obviously an evolving area. The auto-inflammatory diseases tend to have an upregulated immune system. We worry more in this situation about a downregulated immune system. Obviously, many of those folks with those areas of concern have increased inflammation, and that's certainly one of the pathways that are concerning. So obviously, it's an evolving area. On the Lyme and co-infection side, I checked with a number of my different colleagues, and the general consensus is that there's probably not a greatly increased risk to you, as Dr. Asfour said. Obviously, we look also at specific markers of immune function, and the basic question is, how did you do in the past when you got a cold or a flu? And if the answer is it was pretty mild, or I got it and I got sick and I got better, that probably means you're not at an increased risk category for this situation. On the other hand, if different immune markers have been abnormal in the past, like low immunoglobulin levels or immune impairment markers, a low on the white blood cell count, CBC, there's a marker called the ANC, the absolute neutrophil count. That's one area of risk. So, if that is low, you are at an increased risk of infections in general. But if you're normal, which the vast majority of our patients are, again, you shouldn't be at an increased risk category. So let me just scan through the question list and make sure there isn't a last thing or two that we should touch on. One question was on Alinea, nitazoxanide, a medication which we do use for a lot of gut conditions, and also, repurposing it for use in some chronic infections. It does actually have some in vitro evidence in the literature that's been published on activity against viruses in general, as well as certain coronaviruses, but the research has all been published. It's a little bit skewed because most of it's coming out of Dr. Rossignol, who's the founder of the drug, and so he, it's interesting data, but it's interesting to me also that it's not. I haven't seen it listed in the mainstream media as one of the drugs that all these, medical systems, hospitals, doctors, public health departments, et cetera, have been looking at repurposing. So the jury's out on that one for me for now. Ramsey, any other?
Somebody asked that, do I think it'll be over in 6? Why do I think it might be over in 6 weeks? I don't think it'll be over in 6 weeks. I think that we'll be on the other side of we'll hopefully be on the downswing in 6 weeks. But I certainly don't think it'll be over. I think we're going to be dealing with sporadic cases. Once we get on the downswing and we get to a level of where China is now, without many more new cases popping up, there will be periods where we're relaxing social controls, and there'll be more cases, and so it'll be an up and down, but not as severe as now in terms of shutting down the whole economy. I think things will get better from that sense, but until there's a vaccine or until there's significant herd immunity, or both, we're going to have episodic cases for sure. It'll be with us for a while.
Yeah, and that's also unclear. Some questions are coming in. It's unclear as to if you do get the virus this round or down the line, what does that mean for longer term immunity? The coronavirus family is known to be able to mutate and to adjust its antigen presentation. So Ramsey, I don't know what's your take on that? Will an infection now or in the future protect us from future?
Well, I think it'll protect us from COVID-19 again, but will it protect us from COVID-22? Where I don't know if anybody saw Dr. Fauci's interview with Zuckerberg on Facebook Live yesterday, they were talking about the vaccine development and why it's taking so long, and what's the immunity and the take there. But I think yeah, I think there's a lot that we don't know, but we're going, and Dr. Fauci was talking about the broad spectrum coronavirus vaccine that will protect against this COVID-19, but SARS, MERS, and other coronaviruses. So that's the holy grail of vaccines at the moment. And I certainly would be in line to get one for for those. The trials are underway. Sometimes a vaccine can cause more harm than good, so we have to be careful. So it has to go through some sort of careful study before we let it go to the full population.
Yeah, thank you, Ramsey. So we're going to transition to Lindsay in just a minute, but I just want to bring home what I think is the most important point that we need to be considering right now, and that is that it's really, really imperative that we take this idea of social distancing and rest in place, staying at home, very, very seriously. And the quicker, and that message unfortunately has been muddied and not clear at a societal and a government level. The quicker we can get behind that, and if we can reach 90% achievement of that, then we have a chance of helping this thing turn off more quickly. If we're shy of that, we are at risk again of ongoing, severe spikes of the cases, and again, like Dr. Asfour said, overwhelming our medical system, which is what happened in Italy. And again, 6 weeks, maybe up to 3 months is possibly what we're looking at right now. And then what's going to happen, there'll be a phase of relaxing of that restriction. And then we're basically in watch and wait mode, and we see what happens. Do we stay clear? Do we start seeing spikes of infections again, in which case we have to implement the restrictions again? But again, the quicker we can do this, the more thoroughly we can do this, even though it's stressful and difficult, for all of us, especially those who have young kids, et cetera, the more effective we're going to be. So please take that message home, spread it to your friends, tell everybody, and really one of the silver linings of this for me is that we're all in this together. And even though it's somewhat terrifying, really, and it's been very anxiety provoking for all of us, those moments where I suddenly feel connected to the people of China and the people of Italy and the people all the way across the world, wealthy and poor, and all of us are in this together. And I don't know if you guys saw, but the images of the people in Italy standing out on their balconies and singing the national anthem coordinated at a certain moment in time, you just feel this sense of humanity. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. The vast majority of us are going to be totally fine. Unfortunately, there are a significant number of people who will get sick, and even some people who die. And the more effectively we can take these measures to heart and put them in a place, we're going to minimize those numbers. And so, again, we're committed to working our best to get you and us through this. We'll be having these meetings regularly. There's a lot of questions about whether we will record them. We will. We're going to record them and post them. We will be posting the first half of the recording, basically the any updates, lectures, presentations, even mindfulness exercises, et cetera. And then partway through, when we transition more to people talking and sharing, and in the more intimate section, we're going to stop the recording at that point. We'll probably end up recording through that today, but then when we post it, we will truncate that, and so people can feel safe to share your personal experience and be a little bit more intimate. So with that, I'd like to bring Lindsay Christensen on. Lindsay has a master's degree and a certified nutritionist specialist degree as well. She's been working closely with our practice for the last few months, and it's been a real joy to have her on board. She brings a wealth of experience, both in nutrition, health coaching overall, and also with chronic infections like Lyme disease and co-infections. And she does a deep dive on the research, always highlighting the most important facts that we all need to be paying attention to, and has already been a huge asset to our clinic. So we're lucky to have her with us. And with that, Lindsay, if you want to jump in and give a short presentation, that'd be wonderful.
Hi, everyone. I didn't actually prepare a slideshow today, just because my allotted time is fairly brief, but if there's demand for it, I would be happy to in a future webinar to give you guys a slideshow doing a deep dive into nutrition and how you can use it to support your immune system during this time. But I do have some notes here, just some things I felt would be pertinent and worthwhile to cover today, nutrition-wise. So when we look at something like the coronavirus and what we can do with food, I think we need to take like a two-pronged approach. One is to look at the nutrients and foods we can eat to support a healthy immune system, so to support our immune cells in their activity, defending us against pathogens. And then the other side of it, especially with a viral infection, is to look at minimizing inflammation, because a lot of the potential harm that can come from a viral infection is related to your body's own inflammatory response that's launched in reaction to the virus. So kind of balancing those two sides of the nutrition equation is what I'm doing in my own life and recommending to clients and patients as well. So overall, I think eating a nutrient dense diet based on whole foods, as kind of general as that sounds, is a solid approach. So a paleo template is really great. Eating plenty of vegetables, doing plenty of protein, actually balancing protein with continuing to do some exercise to support your muscle mass may be helpful. There's some research showing that our lean body mass or muscle mass plays an important role in our immune system. So kind of balancing your protein intake to help with that. Balancing blood sugar as well. The risk of coronavirus, I'm sure the clinicians can speak better to this than me. I know hypertension was one of an important risk factor for this version of coronavirus. But other chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes can be a risk factor as well. And part of that has to do with faulty blood sugar regulation and how that impacts the immune system. So if you have any sort of blood sugar issues, just making sure you're eating in a way that supports blood sugar control for you. Then to talk a bit about certain foods and nutrients that you may want to focus on during this time, vitamin D is going to be really important. So there is some emerging research showing that one of the ways that this virus enters our cells is through a receptor that's influenced by vitamin D, called the ACE2 receptor. And there's been some talk floating around about whether you might want to avoid doing really high doses of vitamin D, just given the fact that this vitamin may interact with those receptors. And I'm of the opinion that if you're getting sunshine and eating foods that naturally contain vitamin D, enough to support a healthy physiological level of vitamin D in your body, that you'll probably be in a pretty good place. Vitamin D is really important for helping your cells create antimicrobial compounds that can actually target viruses. So you really do need it for that purpose. And there's also research showing that vitamin D helps balance the inflammatory response to viral infection as well. This isn't looking specifically at this novel version of the coronavirus, but looking at things like influenza and other viral respiratory infections. Vitamin D appears to be really important for managing inflammation and your overall immune response there. Then another vitamin that you can easily get through food is vitamin A, and that's going to support your antiviral immune response as well. Some of the main food sources for preformed vitamin A are going to be egg yolks. If you have access to pastured eggs at this time, those are an especially great source. Doing cod liver oil is another option that'll actually contain a nice balance of vitamin D and vitamin A for supporting your immune system. Beef liver, if you can handle fresh beef liver, you know, sauteed or even chopped up and put into like a meatloaf, or mixed with ground beef into a burger, that's one way to get a nice dose of vitamin A. And I know CCFM has a supplement that contains some different organ meats, and liver is one of the organ meats in there that you can take if you don't like the taste of beef liver so much and just kind of want to take it as a supplement. And then also vitamin C and zinc are going to be important, you know, to maintain optimal levels of those, since those nutrients also are crucial for your immune response. We don't know whether vitamin C and zinc really target this virus, but just given the fact that they're important for your immune system, I would make sure you're eating foods that contain those. So good sources of vitamin C are going to be like citrus fruits, strawberries, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and bell peppers. And then zinc is found in decent amounts in red meat and chicken and turkey, as well as in oysters, and it comes in a pretty hefty dose in oysters, so that's one way to get some zinc. And then a couple categories of foods that you may want to focus on at this time. One is fermented foods. So those are a great source of probiotic bacteria. And there's some pretty interesting research showing that probiotics can actually help support our body's response to viruses, including the influenza virus. So, you know, given that there's a little bit of similarity in that coronavirus and influenza are both enveloped viruses, probiotics may just help support your immune system in general. So doing things like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, things like that, and just supporting your gut microbiome overall will help, because a decent portion of your immune system resides in there. And then another food group to consider are ones that help support glutathione production. Glutathione is an antioxidant, but there's research showing that it's really important for helping to maintain a healthy respiratory system. So some foods that you can use to support glutathione are going to be cruciferous vegetables, so things like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, kind of those pungent cruciferous veggies are going to be good for that. And then a couple other things, just doing some bone broth. You could do it plain or as a base for a soup or stew. That's been used for a long time, just in, you know, folk medicine and ancestral cultures for supporting the immune system. So bringing in some bone broth and having some cozy meals made with that might feel comforting and good. And then the last food I wrote down, you know, again, I'm not saying that this treats coronavirus, but it has been found previously to support the immune system, is green tea. So I'm a huge green tea fan, and I've just been drinking more of that. And there's just a little bit of research showing it can help with the immune system, and also it's good for balancing inflammation. So that's my brief summary of what you can do with some nutritional interventions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And, you know, those are some really great, easy to implement at home recommendations on diet, really focused on the importance of balancing and maintaining a healthy immune system, and also balancing our inflammatory response. So it's all really, really wonderful and appropriate. And, you know, I would just also add, you know, that, you know, what we're going to eat is very important, but also, you know, how we eat it, where we eat it, when we eat it, These are all other really important factors, especially during this kind of a time of extreme stress, really. You know, we can sometimes lose focus on that. So taking some deep breaths before you sit down to eat, you know, really having the intention of enjoying this food together as a family. And when you take some deep breaths and you prepare your body to eat, then you're activating your relaxation or parasympathetic nervous system, and you're going to digest your food better, and your whole digestive system function is going to work better. And then also avoiding the temptation that we all have, or trying to avoid the temptation that we can all have under times of stress, you know, to partake more in foods which maybe aren't as healthy, you know, sugar, alcohol, caffeine, you know, those things are all going to suppress and potentially impair your immune response. So really, you know, trying to maintain healthy habits around all those factors can be really, really critical. So with that, we're going to transition again. Thank you, Lindsay. That was really helpful. And I'd like to introduce my friend and colleague, Valerie Keim. Valerie is a marriage and family therapist, also EMDR specialist, working, you know, focused geographically in the East Bay. And she has a deep understanding of helping, you know, individuals and families through different anxiety-producing events, trauma trigger events, you know, just around general, you know, psychosocial aspects, but also specifically for those with complex chronic illnesses, like Lyme disease, for example, and how that puts us into, you know, can put many of us into a very uncertain place with regards to our health, with regards to our relationship to the medical system, with regards to our relationship and ability to socialize and be part of society, you know, from a social fun point of view, but also work, school, etc. So a really deep and important skill set. And so Valerie and I have been talking over the last number of months, and Lindsay as well, about developing a support program for patients with Lyme disease and chronic complex illnesses. And so it's really a quick pivot for us then to kind of put this kind of a presentation together and have this be our, you know, first opportunity to dip our toe in the water together with regards to some of this virtual support. So with that, it's a really big honor and pleasure to introduce Valerie Keim. And Valerie, you're still muted, so let me unmute you, or you can do that, yeah, lower left, perfect.
Hey, thank you, Sunja, for that introduction. I'm so pleased to be here, and what I'm going to do is talk about the second pandemic that's going on and what we can do to flatten the curve on that as well. Because, you know, there are two pandemics happening right now. Coronavirus is the big one, but right behind that, there's a pandemic of anxiety that's circling the globe. And certainly, I don't know one person that isn't affected by that. Just like our wonderful doctors on the panel are managing the corona, I'm going to help you to turn your fears around with this one the same way the virus will be turned around. And, you know, it really parallels the virus. You know, it's up to each and every individual to be responsible for their own mental and emotional safety and well-being during this time. And we're hearing about masks and gloves. I'm taking the look of asks and love, I'll call it, learning how to ask for what you want, how to listen to when people are asking you for what they need, and how to deliver that with big doses of generosity and ease and being kind to ourselves and to others. Because the fact is, we are under siege. We're in a hurricane of change, loss, unprecedented uncertainty in the last generation or two. All of us together globally are being tossed about by worries over our health, finances, food and medical supply chain, and of course, our loved ones. But the good news is this: we get to have our strong feelings. Anxiety is spontaneous and natural, given the circumstances. It's a healthy response to an unhealthy situation. But managing our reactions to anxiety, how we behave, what stories we tell ourselves, what we allow to drive us, how we treat ourselves and others, needs to be a deliberate and skillful choice. And what I'm going to be doing throughout all of these presentations is to present and allow you to practice some of these artful skills. The purpose is to move the gale forces of fear back into the calm eye of the storm that is at the center of our being. I'll teach you new ways to pivot your angst back into inner strength. The first step always is how to reframe how we view our fears. From now on, I want you to look at anxiety not as a liability, but as an energy source. And we need energy to sustain us. For most of us right now, anxiety is a fully charged battery that we can and should tap. I want you to envision a cycle. We all have our own version of this, where anxiety rises up moment to moment, day to day. But from now on, rather than feeling out of control, we embrace it and use it as a focal point to reground and recenter. Then we get a virtuous cycle rather than a downward vicious cycle going. The more often we feel anxious, the more energy we'll have available to rechannel, and the more integrated and resilient we get to be. How on earth do we do this? We're going to use stress as a wake-up call. And we're going to, today, I'm going to introduce you to two practices that we're going to take more time today so you can learn them and amplify them and really get to understand them. But after the session ends, you can use these once an hour, once a day. Whenever you're watching CNN, you can take them with you. They're portable. It'll take you anywhere from 15 seconds to at max a minute to do these. And they'll move your anxiety spike from a 8 to a 10 down to, with practice, maybe a 1 or a 2. Given the circumstances, it's healthy and appropriate to have some anxiety. So, ready to go? So the deal is, whenever you feel anxiety, usually notice it as a physical symptom first. Then our mind tells us some story about why we're anxious. All this happens like in 1/10 of 1 second increments. And then we get that emotional whoosh where we know we're feeling anxious and stressed out. And it's different for anybody. You know, throughout this entire series, we'll be exploring that, and you'll have more of a chance to share and participate and as the flyer said, safely mingle with one another. But for now, this is a real great, quick exercise. It's a physical exercise because stress, anxiety, fear that we're all experiencing is so physical. So when you feel it in your body right now, take note of that. You know, if you've got paper and pen or your laptop in front of you, write it down. Maybe 2, 3 symptoms when your body is signaling to you that you're getting upset, that you're getting stressed out. And rather than looking at those as something aversive and something to be avoided, look at them as your allies, your helpers, your friends. It's like a little tiny alarm bell going off. It's saying it's time to recenter, reground, regroup. It's time to connect with what's most important in the calm eye of the storm, at the center of our being. And with that in mind, this is what you're going to do. I don't think I can stand up. I'm kind of locked into a desk here. But I want you to, if you feel comfortable, close your eyes right now, because it's so much easier to learn how to do these exercises when you can focus on your inner sensorium rather than the outer world. And right away, notice where you feel that anxiety in your body and make it the right sized amount. Don't let it run away with you. You know, feel it, but stay a little bit above it too. This is part of your individual responsibility and being a wise and loving but firm inner parent to all of our younger, more scared emotions. Just notice where it is in the body. This is your wake-up call that it's time to take a 30-second stress break. Now, paying attention to that, keep your awareness focused on those physical feelings. Maybe even the thoughts that go with them, doesn't matter. And if you can, if you're standing, that's great. Stand and put your feet about shoulder width apart. Open up your spine, take a deep breath. If you're sitting, sit forward so the kind of the bottom part of your hip socket and your tailbone make a really nice, comfortable, solid base for you. Then move your arms slightly out from your sides. And you're still focused on those symptoms of anxiety, which are now your friend telling you, let's take a break. Let's do something different for a minute. Let's just not go there. And take some slow, deep, diaphragmatic breaths. Don't have to change the symptoms of anxiety or change your thoughts. Just notice them. Be kind towards them. Breathing in through your nose as slowly and fully and deeply as you can. And out through your mouth as steady and softly as you can. And just feel what it's like to inhabit your skin with all this jumpy, nervous, fretful energy. Isn't that curious? Again, we can be like a wise and loving inner parent, just watching this within ourselves. It's okay. It doesn't mean we're not safe and held. And now, what we're going to do, while you are now doing two things, you're focusing on the sensations of anxiety while you're doing the slow, deep breathing. Don't have to get upset by them or change them or rush away from them. We're just absorbing them. Now I want you to imagine you've just done that 20-second hand wash, but you're out of, guess what, paper towels. So you have to shake the droplets of water off of your fingertips. So start to shake your hands exactly like that. Start slow, just from the wrist down. That's all we're going to do today. In fact, I want you to start with just one hand. We're going to keep this super simple. So you're doing three things at once. You're letting your hand shake itself dry while you're breathing slowly and deeply. And the center of your attention is on what's happening with the anxiety in your body. I want you to take 3 slow, deep breaths into focusing on how those anxiety symptoms can shift and move and amplify and diminish. Just watch them flow throughout your body. Maybe they stay put, that's just fine too. While you're breathing slowly and deeply in through your nose and out through your mouth. And your hand is shaking. And in fact, maybe it's hand gel, it's just not coming off. So shake your hand a little more vigorously. You can slap it, you can try different angles. And now stop and keep your eyes closed and just rest in that. I want you to notice the different sensations in the shake hand compared to the hand that's been still. Do you notice how you feel that hand feels more alive, more energized, more open? And the other hand feels kind of dull and contracted and a little bit more lifeless. Those are the words most people tend to use when they describe that difference. The reason this exercise, keep breathing by the way, slowly and deeply, is so effective is that we're triggering both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system at the same time. We're adding the relaxation response while the shaking invites our body to rev up. And the dissonance from that, the disconnect from that, does a wonderful thing. It jolts us out of our conditioned response to how we hold on to stress. Our body loves this. Our nervous system loves this. It goes, whoopee, I don't have to hold on to this stuff anymore. And you release immediately. So now let's close if your eyes open, go ahead and close them again. And now we're going to do the other hand. So again, center down into your body. Feel where the stress has been hanging out with you for the last week or two. Breathe slowly and deeply into it. And now start the shaking, just in your hand, just in the other hand, just in your wrist down. Try to get all those water drops off and save your paper towels. And now add both hands to that. And make this right for you. Be gentle with yourself. You know, if you have physical injury or poor energy, make this right for you. It's going to work regardless. We're all breathing anyway. That's free and cheap to do. And make the shaking the way you need it to be while you're focusing on the stressors in your body. I'm going to do 2 more breaths. 1 in through your nose and out through your mouth. Focusing on the sensations of stress in your body while you're shaking. And with your eyes resting closed, come to a slow stop and just notice what's gone on inside your body now. What's changed? Do you feel lighter, brighter, heavier, calmer? Just notice what you notice, what's there for you. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. This is a great 15-minute stress break. You can do it for 5 minutes. You can do it while you're watching CNN. You can do it when you just catch yourself touching your face when you shouldn't have been and now you're upset by it. You can do it when you watch your stock portfolio. It'll really help to balance out what's going on, kind of in that wonderful sphere of mind-body connection. A lot of times students, especially I teach this one who loves it the most, are attorneys studying for the bar exam. When they need their stress break from their study break, that's what they do. Every 20 minutes, they'll just stop and shake and breathe for a few minutes, and then they go back into their studies in a really focused, alert, and re-energized way. So it's good enough for attorneys studying for the bar. I know it's good enough for you and me. And any questions about that? Any comments whatsoever? Maybe not now, and that's fine, but you can always reach me later if you're wondering about that. But it's a good one. What I'm delivering through these seminars is where you get the biggest bang for your buck, the strongest outcome in the least amount of effort for managing stress and anxiety. I'm gonna run us through might take 5 minutes, maybe. It's going to be a different type of mindfulness exercise where we're going to be calm and quiet. So I invite you right now to settle in. You know, you can slump back in your chair if you feel like doing that. Lie down on the floor if you feel like doing that. Just want your body to be relaxed so your mind can be clear and free. We're going to do a reconnecting mindfulness exercise. And while I'm going to take 5 minutes to do this now, I want you to know that afterwards, this is something that you can do in 1 or 2 slow, deep breaths. And if you combine it with that shaking exercise, you'll have a real power tool to help you. So go ahead and prepare, close your eyes. Start taking again those slow, gentle, being easy and generous with yourself, slow breaths. Make sure you don't have anything on your lap if you're sitting there. Don't have a book or a notebook or anything. This is just going to be a quiet, reflective moment for you. And the truth is, we're wired as a species to be connected to one another. It's one of the deepest drives we have. And one of the reasons we're so stressed right now is we're cut off from one another physically. An infant's eye gaze, human touch is vital to our well-being. We're wired that way. We are not a species where our moms laid like 1,000 eggs at once and crawled off or swam off, hoping 1 or 2 of us survived. No, we're wired to deeply bond with one another for optimal health. And there's decades of literature that supports this. So this mindfulness exercise is going to bring you back into a deep sense of connection with the people around you and yourself. So start by settling down even more. If you need to wriggle about or move or stretch, please do so, because that's going to help you to center even more. Breathing slowly and deeply. I want you to think of the most precious and special person in your life. And if you're blessed enough to have several really precious people to choose from, you can pick one today and one later on this evening, but just pick one for starters. Somebody who you love more than life itself. This person could have passed or they could still be alive, doesn't really matter. You know, if you're on your own, it could be your own beloved dog or cat, doesn't matter. Just make sure you've got that image in your head and just look at them in your mind's eye. I want you to breathe 3 slow, deep breaths into the love you feel for them, into the deep appreciation of what they mean for you. Look at their eyes, their hair, who they are. Feel that soul connection that you've always shared with them. You know exactly why this is the one you picked. And while you're looking at them, please notice the physicality of the emotion of love in your chest, your heart muscle, your sternum. Feel into the physicality of love in your body while you're gazing at your loved one. Is it warm? Is it light? Does your chest feel glowy or energized? Just notice that. Maybe there's a color that automatically springs to mind that's associated with your loved one. And as you experience that anchor of the experience of your heart-to-heart connection, allow it to expand out to include the other loved ones in your life. Stay with the physicality of what's going on in your body and bring in a few more people you care deeply about. And breathe that connection too. And then breathe out a little bit further to friends, neighbors, acquaintances, the people you miss from work. But stay connected to those physical sensations and the love in your heart that got opened up as you reconnected with your precious one. You don't have to care for your neighbors with the same degree. This is your experience about your caring that's an energy within your own body. And expand out to the city you live in. It's kind of like the Zoom Google satellite function that's in our own minds and hearts. Stay connected to your heart center while you notice the entire West Coast, our beautiful country, and the continent. Take that in. From the North Pole down to the South. This is us. One breath, quite literally, we know that now. While you're grounded with the precious person that you started with and those wonderful feelings, expand out across the oceans to all the continents. So you see the image of our entire Mother Earth. And here you are in your own heart, loving your favorite person. You notice there's no end to your imagination and being able to connect that with the good heart energy that you carry. They have a boundless energy. This is you. This is your connection to all of life, as well as your loved one. Now bring that back to your original precious one that you started with. Just see them, how dear they are. And notice what's different now compared to a couple of minutes ago. What else do you see as you look at your loved one? What else do you notice in the cavity around your own heart and lungs and sternum now that wasn't there before? And place your precious one inside your heart. Take all the time you need. And keeping your eyes closed, return back to just noticing your breath in sitting here. Now this one you can do quietly. Anytime you need to be regrounded, anytime you want to switch off anxiety or fear or angst, breathe into this energy. It's yours, it's a part of you. You know, we have wonderful healing medicines and supplements. But to heal our hearts, to stay steady and grounded at this time, we've got all we need within us. We can stay connected in our hearts and minds, even when we're physically apart. So let's practice going back into that right now. Just switch it back on. That good, strong heart energy. You can dive into it with one breath and then switch away from it. Back to just kind of noticing yourself sitting in a chair. And then quickly switch it on again. Take one deep breath, diving back into that good energy. How you feel in your chest when you think of your loved one. And then once again, switch it off. So we can manage this. It's not an ephemeral random chance. We can turn it on and we can sustain ourselves during these times of uncertainty. Now, taking the time you want, go ahead and open your eyes. And we have a couple of minutes left. I want you to know that in these future seminars, we're going to have a lot of time just to talk amongst ourselves. Right now, today, I'm not sure how possible that is, but there's so much more that's going to be unfolding down the road over the next number of weeks while we continue with this. So I'm about to turn this back over to Sunja. And she's got some final remarks and questions to ask everybody. But be well and just try these two exercises. Watch the difference they make. Share them with your friends. Tell them what you noticed. And like anything else, practice, practice, practice. The trick is our bodies and hearts and minds love to feel good. And these practices I gave you today are easily become habits because there's something within us, our nervous system, that just grabs onto them so quickly because it's a quick rescue for how we're feeling. So make a pledge to yourself to practice them, 2 or 3 times today while it's still fresh in your mind. And maybe just tomorrow, every hour or two, dive into these for a moment or two and see how you'll have a different quality to your day. Just notice by the end of tomorrow how you feel. And then decide for yourself if you want to keep doing this or if it's not for you. I suspect you'll get great results and want to just keep sipping from this particular bottle of medicine. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate your participation. Back over to you, Sunja.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Valerie. I hope everybody was able to feel their heart calming a little bit, feel their heartbeat slowing, feel their breathing deepen, their body relaxing. Even just a little bit, even just a couple of notches, when we can continue to work that down and work it down from a level of 7, 8, 9 down to even a 6 or 7 or a 4 or a 5 or a 2 or a 1, even better. And we start to remember again, what it's like to not feel this stress and anxiety, and then to recognize when we re-enter that space. So we really want to kind of become mindful ninjas and learn to, like Valerie showed us, turn these emotions on and off to control our mind and our body in an effective way, so that we can use that stress to mobilize ourselves, to pay attention, to understand what we need to do and where things are going, but also to minimize the detrimental effects it can have if it's unchecked and if it goes on for too long. And by all indications, we're going to be in this for a while. So you know, my hope is that, you know, we all stay healthy through this and that we come out on the other side with a whole new toolkit of things that we can use to help us be even better off than before.
To echo everybody's sentiments, and I think that was a great session, Valerie. Thank you. That you know, we need to think of the bright side of this. I think that's very powerful, and there's a lot of you know, you can always look at things in two ways. So that's your comments and methods are very poignant.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very true. There, you know, I wouldn't wish this on any of us, but it is offering us some pretty unique silver linings that we'll never get again, not like this. And it's important to be mindful of those and to bring those out. In fact, I know in some of the future conversations we're going to have in these seminars, we're going to be talking exactly about that. You know, what's the gift for each of us that's coming out of this? What are we doing now that we wouldn't be able to do? What are we accessing now that we normally couldn't? You know, and that goes along with everything else we're having to deal with. So,
I think the earth is healing as well. The earth. You look at Venice. There's dolphins now near the canals, and the water in the canals is clear. It hasn't been
unbelievable.
Decades. I mean,
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Just search Venice fish in canals, and there's all these stories about like this amazing visibility in the canals. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're becoming more clean. We're becoming more visible to one another. You know, the rare times I go out, you know, I live in a big city, everybody's looking me in the eye and smiling and being kind and helpful. As a species, we've just kind of dropped a lot of useless anxiety that we didn't need. We're dealing with very real anxiety, but that brings a center of gravity to our being that most of us wouldn't get. And these exercises, the breathing and the guided meditation, they're super skills. You know, if you do this for 1 minute a day, you will be a different person with an incredible skill set by the time this is over. You'll be able to just drop, and your stress level will never hit a 9 or 10 again. It would be incompatible if you did this a couple minutes every day.
So let's make that our goal. We are going to do our best to make this a weekly occurrence at least, if not start to develop out more offerings and content ability for us to help you and for us all to connect together. So we look forward to seeing you back in a week if you can make it. You know, this was a test run today. Thank you so much for joining us. We will also, you know, open up the availability of it past CCFM when we feel like we have a good flow on what we're doing. AJ, was there a question also before I transition regarding what Valerie just said, you guys have homework, please. I want everybody to practice one of those exercises that Valerie gave to us every single day, at least once, if not twice. And again, it's like going to the gym and working out your muscles. They get bigger. If you work out your brain and your nervous system in this way, you increase your capacity for balancing and strengthening. So every single day, please. Deep gratitude and thank you to everyone, to AJ and Christy for making this happen, Dr. Asfor for your presentation, Lindsay for yours, Valerie for your presence here as well. You know, it's our goal to do our best to help all of you through this, and by doing that, it also feeds us and helps us feel like we're doing our part. So deep gratitude to everyone. Please stay safe out there, and we look forward to seeing you back in about a week.